Oh my God.
The sun was not up yet. The sky was dark blue, like the color of sadness. The mountains around the ranch were still sleeping. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before something bad happens. Right before a heart breaks. Right before a life changes forever. A donkey stood in the corral. His name was Jasper. He was old. Very old. His gray coat had turned lighter over the years, like his body was slowly fading away. His legs were thin now. His bones showed under his skin, but his eyes were still bright. His eyes could see things. And every morning, his eyes looked at the same thing. The chimney. The chimney was made of old red brick. Dark red, like the color of dried blood. It had been standing there for 70 years. 70 years of rain. 70 years of wind. 70 years of Colorado snow. The bricks were cracked in many places. The mortar between them was broken. But the chimney still stood. It still stood tall and proud on the old ranch house. And Jasper still watched it every single morning. It was 5:47 in the morning. Jasper knew this time. He did not have a clock. He did not have a watch. But his body knew. His body had learned this time over 17 years of standing in this same spot. 17 years of watching. 17 years of waiting. Every morning at 5:47, something would happen. Something that Jasper had come to live for. Something that gave his old body a reason to wake up and stand. The first smoke would come. It would come from the top of the chimney. Blue smoke, gray smoke. Smoke that meant someone was awake inside the house. Smoke that meant the old man was awake. Smoke that meant the day was beginning. Jasper stood very still. His hooves did not move. His tail did not move. Only his eyes moved. Only his eyes followed the chimney. He had been standing in this exact spot since the sun went down yesterday. He would stand here until the sun went down today. This was his life. This was all of his life now. Standing and watching and waiting for the smoke. The old man's name was Thomas Garrett. He was 84 years old. He had lived on this ranch for his entire adult life. 43 years of waking up at 5:47 in the morning. 43 years of walking to the fireplace. 43 years of lighting the fire with matches that he kept in the same drawer. 43 years of watching the first flames catch the dried wood. 43 years of seeing the smoke rise up through the bricks and into the cold mountain air. He had never missed a single morning. Not once. Not when his wife was dying in the bedroom upstairs. Not when his son left to live in the city and did not come back. Not when his father-in-law died and left him alone with the grief of losing the man who built the chimney. Not when his own body started to hurt in the morning and his hands shook so bad that he could barely hold the matches. Not once had he missed this ritual. This one thing that he had done every single day for 4,358 days. Because the ritual was not just about making fire. It was not just about staying warm. The ritual was about something else. The ritual was a message. A message without words. A message sent up the chimney in smoke. A message that said, I am still here. I am still alive. I am still awake. I am still watching. And every morning, the donkey received that message. Every morning, Jasper saw the smoke and Jasper understood. He was not alone. The old man was not alone. They were together in this world. They were both still here. They were both still standing. They were both still alive. The relationship between the old man and the old donkey had never required words. It had never required touch. It had never required much of anything except presence, except showing up, except standing in the same place day after day after day, except caring about the same thing, except being faithful to something that nobody else understood. When Jasper first came to the ranch, he was young. He was brought by Thomas's son. The boy thought a donkey would be useful. Donkeys are small. Donkeys are strong. Donkeys can carry heavy things. Donkeys do not eat much. Donkeys do not get sick easily. The boy thought his father would like to have a donkey. The boy did not understand that his father did not really want an animal for work. His father wanted an animal for companionship. His father wanted to be alone in a way that was not lonely. The boy grew up. The boy left. The boy became a man who lived in a city where there were no mountains and no donkeys and no old ranch houses with chimneys. The boy became a man who called his father once a month and asked if everything was okay. The boy never understood his father's answer, which was always the same. Yes, everything is okay. The chimney still stands. The donkey is still here, but something was happening now. Something that the old man had received in a white envelope with the county seal on it. The paper inside had words. Official words. Government words. The words said that the ranch was not productive anymore. The words said that the land was valuable for something else. The words said that he had to leave. The words said that the county would come with big machines and erase everything. Thomas Garrett had read those words. And he had looked at the chimney. And he had looked at the donkey. And he had understood something that made his old heart break into pieces. Now it was 5:47 in the morning again. The sun was still not up. The sky was still dark blue. And Thomas Garrett was in the kitchen standing with matches in his shaking hand. He wanted to light the fire. He wanted to send the message. But he was afraid. He was afraid because he did not know how many more times he would get to send this message. He did not know if this was the second to last time, or the last time, or if he had already sent the last message without knowing it. His hand shook worse than usual. The match fell. He picked it up. He tried again. The fire caught. The wood began to burn. The smoke began to rise. He watched it rise with tears running down his old face. He understood now that every ordinary thing might be the last ordinary thing, that every morning might be the last morning. That witness itself was disappearing. Outside, in the corral, Jasper saw the first wisps of smoke. His body relaxed. The message had come. He had received it. The old man was still awake. The old man still cared. They were still together. But this morning was different. Because now they both knew. They both understood. This beautiful, ordinary, sacred thing that had happened every single morning for 17 years was ending. And there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. Jasper did not move. The donkey just stood there, watching the smoke rise into the dark sky, watching it disappear into the clouds, trying to memorize this moment, trying to hold it inside his old body forever, because forever was all they had left. Forever and these last few mornings. Forever and the memory of smoke. Forever and the knowledge that someone had cared enough to show up every single day. That was love. That was it. That was the only thing that mattered.
They came on a Tuesday morning. There were 3 of them, young people in clean clothes. Clothes that did not have dirt on them. Clothes that did not belong to a ranch. They drove a large car that was too clean, too shiny. They parked it in the yard like they owned it already. Thomas watched from the window. He watched them get out of the car. He watched them look at his house like they were looking at a problem that needed to be solved. One of them took out a camera. Another took out a notebook. The third one was talking into a phone, talking about the property, talking about potential, talking about money. Jasper was in the corral. The donkey did not look at the visitors. The donkey only looked at the chimney. But the old man could see everything from the window. He could see the 3 young people walking toward the house. He could see them pointing. He could see them writing things down. He could see the moment they stopped caring about the land and only cared about what the land was worth. Thomas did not want to let them inside, but he had to. They had papers, official papers, papers that said they had the right to come inside, papers that said his home was not really his home anymore. It belonged to the county now. It belonged to the future now. And the future belonged to these 3 young people in their clean clothes. They walked through his house like they were walking through a museum. They touched the kitchen cabinets. They wrote down the measurements. They took pictures of the wooden beams. The beams that Thomas's grandfather had cut from trees on this land. The beams that had held up the roof for 80 years. The beams that had been part of this house longer than Thomas had been alive. But to these young people, the beams were just numbers. Just facts. just things that could be listed on a form and sold to someone else. One of the young people asked about the donkey. "Does the donkey come with the property?" she asked. Thomas said no. The donkey would stay. She looked confused. She did not understand how a donkey could not be part of property. She did not understand that some things do not belong to land. Some things belong to people. Some things belong to love. Thomas repeated it. "The donkey stays with me." She wrote something in her notebook. She did not write "the donkey stays." She probably wrote negotiable or to be determined or some other phrase that meant she did not believe him. She did not understand that some things are not negotiable, that some things cannot be bought or sold, that some things matter more than money. After the three young people left, Thomas went outside. The sun was starting to set. The light was orange and sad. Jasper was still in the same place, still looking at the chimney. The donkey had not moved all day. The donkey had not moved while the strangers walked through the house. The donkey had not moved while they took pictures. The donkey had not moved while they talked about value and potential and future development. Thomas stood next to Jasper. He did not speak. There was nothing to say. The old man and the old donkey just stood together while the sun went down. They stood while the light left the sky. They stood while the world changed around them without asking permission. 2 days later, a letter came. It was from the county. It was official. It had a date on it. A date that meant something. A date that meant an ending. The letter said that the county would come to the ranch on the first day of the month. They would bring machines. Big machines. Machines that could erase things. The letter said that everything not removed by that date would be considered abandoned. Everything would be destroyed. Thomas counted the days. 45 days. He had 45 days to decide what to do. 45 days to figure out how to save something. 45 days before everything he had built, everything he had loved, everything he had stood for would be gone. He called his son. His son was busy. His son was always busy. His son worked in a city far away. A city where there were no mountains. A city where nobody thought about donkeys or chimneys or old ranches. But the son said he would help. The son said he would take time off work. The son said he would come out to the ranch. When the son arrived, he walked around the property like he had never seen it before. Like he was a stranger. Like he was one of the young people in clean clothes. He saw the house. He saw the barn. He saw the corral. He saw the donkey. But he did not see the meaning. He did not see the love. He did not see that 17 years of looking at a chimney was the greatest love story ever told. The son wanted to call a salvage company. He said the bricks in the chimney were valuable. He said old brick could be sold. He said they could make money from the materials. The son was right about the money. The son was smart about business. But the son was wrong about what mattered. The son had forgotten that some things are not worth money. Some things are worth more than money. Some things are worth everything. That night, Thomas agreed to let his son call the salvage company. But inside his heart, something broke. Something snapped like a dry branch. He realized what was about to happen. They would come to his house. They would take the chimney apart brick by brick. They would clean the bricks. They would sell them to rich people in other cities. The chimney would be destroyed. The message would stop. The daily ritual would be erased. And Jasper would not understand why. The donkey would wake up one morning and the chimney would be gone. The smoke would not rise. The message would not come. And the old animal would stand in the corral wondering why. Wondering where the thing he had loved had gone. Wondering why his purpose had disappeared. Thomas went to his bedroom. He could not sleep. He sat in a chair by the window and looked out at the corral. He could see Jasper in the moonlight. The donkey was still there. Still watching. Still waiting. Still faithful to a chimney that did not know it was about to be taken away. Thomas got a piece of paper. He began to write a letter. A letter to his son. A letter that he knew his son would not read for a long time. Maybe not until after Thomas was dead. He wrote about the year he met his wife. He wrote about the summer his father-in-law came to build the chimney. He wrote about the way the mountains looked at sunset. He wrote about the donkey. He wrote about standing still for 17 years and watching smoke rise into the sky. He wrote, "Some things have value that money cannot measure. Some promises are made not with words, but with presence. Sometimes love looks like standing in the same place every single day and waiting for the same smoke to rise. Sometimes the most important thing is to show up. To be there. To care about something so much that you are willing to do it forever. He sealed the letter. He put it in an envelope. He put it in a drawer where his son would find it someday. Maybe his son would understand then. Maybe not. But Thomas had to try. He had to leave something behind that explained why a man and a donkey could love a chimney so much. Outside, the moon moved across the sky, and Jasper stood in the corral, and the chimney stood on the house. And neither of them knew that this was the beginning of the end. They only knew that they still existed, that they were still together, that the next morning, when the sun came up, they would do it all again. They would stand. They would wait. They would watch for the smoke. They did not know that soon there would be no smoke. They did not know that soon everything would change. They only knew the present moment. And in the present moment, they were still okay. They were still here. They were still together. The phone call started on a Tuesday morning. Thomas had decided something in the middle of the night. He had lain awake in bed and thought about the chimney being torn down. He thought about the bricks being cleaned and sold to strangers. He thought about Jasper standing in an empty corral where the chimney used to be. And he had decided he would not let that happen. Not completely. Not without trying. He called people, old people, people he had known for 40 years. People who owed him favors. People who remembered when he had helped them. A man named Robert who Thomas had saved from a horse accident in 1987. A woman named Sarah who Thomas had hired when nobody else would hire her because she was poor. A rancher named Frank who Thomas had lent money to when his cattle got sick. Thomas called all of them. He asked for help. He did not ask for money. He did not ask for much. He asked if they knew people. People who cared about old things. People who cared about history. People who believed that some things should not be thrown away just because the world was moving forward. By the end of the week, Thomas had talked to someone named Margaret Reeves. Margaret was the director of the County Historical Society. She was 63 years old. She had spent her entire life trying to save old buildings and old stories. She had failed more times than she had succeeded, but she kept trying anyway, because that is what people do when they love something. They keep trying even when it seems hopeless. Thomas told Margaret about the chimney. He told her about the 70 years. He told her about the bricks that his father-in-law had laid with his own hands. He told her about the fires that had burned inside it for 4 decades. He told her about the smoke that had risen into the Colorado sky every single morning. Margaret said yes before Thomas even finished talking. She said she would help. She said the chimney was worth saving. She said that not everything new is better than everything old. She said that some things need to be remembered. What happened in the next 2 weeks was like a miracle, but it was not a miracle exactly. It was just the power of people deciding that one thing mattered. A specialist in old buildings came and looked at the chimney. She said it was built well. She said the bricks were quality. She said the work was honest work. An engineer came and tested the structure. He said it could be moved. It could be taken apart carefully and put back together somewhere else. A man named Raymond owned property 20 miles away. He owned a lot of land. He had been planning to build something new on the land. When Margaret called him, she told him the story. She told him about the old man and the old donkey and the chimney. Raymond listened. Something about the story made him care. He offered land. He offered money. He offered to make the chimney the center of something new, something that would honor something old. Thomas listened to all of this and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt hope. He felt like maybe the world was not completely cruel. Maybe there was still room for things that did not make money. Maybe there was still room for history. Maybe there was still room for love. But then Margaret said something that broke his heart again. She said, "We need to clear the land. The county will not accept a partial removal. Everything needs to be gone from the ranch. The house will be demolished. The other buildings will be removed. And the animals. Thomas, all the animals need to be moved before the demolition date." Thomas understood. He understood that you cannot save one thing without losing something else. He understood that to preserve the chimney, he had to give up the ranch. He had to give up the house. He had to give up the place where he had lived for his entire adult life. And he had to give up Jasper. He went to the corral. He sat down in the dirt next to the donkey. He did not speak at first. He just sat there, an old man and an old animal, both of them aware that an ending was coming. both of them aware that time had run out. Jasper pressed his head against Thomas's leg. The donkey did this sometimes. It was Jasper's way of saying something without words. It was the donkey's way of showing love. It was the way the animal comforted the man when the man was broken. Thomas cried. He cried because he was happy that the chimney would be saved. He cried because he was sad that he had to give up his home. He cried because he was devastated that he had to separate from Jasper. He cried because happiness and sadness were the same thing sometimes. They were two sides of the same coin. You could not have one without the other. He thought about the 17 years. 17 years of standing together. 17 years of morning smoke. 17 years of watching a ritual. 17 years of a love that never needed words, but that was the realest thing in his life. How was he supposed to give that up? How was he supposed to wake up and not see Jasper? How was he supposed to go through a single day without standing in the yard and watching the donkey watch the chimney? But he had made a choice. Not a choice he wanted to make, but the only choice he could live with. He would save the chimney. He would preserve it. He would make sure that the memory of those 17 years would not completely disappear. The chimney would stand somewhere else. People could look at it and someday someone would tell them the story. Someone would explain that an old man and an old donkey had loved this chimney so much that they stood together every morning for nearly 2 decades. That was something. It was not everything, but it was something. Thomas called the animal sanctuary. They were kind when he called. They understood that he was giving up the animal he loved. They said Jasper would be cared for. They said the donkey would live in a place with other animals. They said Jasper would be happy. Thomas knew they were trying to be kind, but he did not believe them. An old donkey cannot just move to a new place and forget 17 years. An old donkey would remember. An old donkey would miss the chimney. An old donkey would understand that something was wrong. But Thomas had no choice. The county would not wait. The developers would not wait. The world would not wait for an old man to figure out how to keep everything he loved. He made the decision official. The chimney would be dismantled tomorrow. Jasper would be picked up tomorrow. The house would be demolished next week. Everything would change in one day. One single day would erase 43 years. That night, Thomas did something he had never done before. He did not light the fire. He did not light the chimney. He sat in the dark and he cried. He cried for the decision he had made. He cried for the choice that felt like losing everything even though he was trying to save something. And in the corral, Jasper stood alone. The donkey did not move. The donkey did not know that tomorrow would be different. The donkey did not know that he would say goodbye to the man he loved. The donkey did not know that the chimney would disappear. The donkey only knew the present moment. And in the present moment, everything was still okay. Everything was still the same. But it would not be the same much longer. The choice had been made. The path was set. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the breaking would begin. The morning came. The day nobody wanted. The day everything would change. The sky was gray. The clouds were low and heavy. It looked like the sky itself was sad. The mountains were hidden behind the clouds. Even the mountains could not bear to watch what was about to happen. At dawn, the trucks arrived. Big trucks. Too big for the small ranch road. They had to park down by the gate and walk up. There were 5 workers. They wore hard hats. They carried tools. Tools that were made for taking things apart. Tools that were made for destroying things. They did not look like they wanted to be there. But they had a job. A job that meant erasing a 70-year-old memory. Thomas stood in the yard. He watched them set up their equipment around the chimney. They put metal scaffolding against the bricks. They attached ropes. They took photographs of every angle. They numbered each brick with chalk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hundreds of bricks. Each one numbered. Each one getting ready to be separated from its home. A woman who worked for the Historical Society came to supervise. Her name was Margaret. She was older than Thomas. She had gray hair and kind eyes. She cared about old things. She cared about saving old things. She had come to document the chimney before it was taken apart. She would take the bricks and rebuild them somewhere else. Somewhere new, but would not be the same. A chimney without a house is like a heart without a body. It still exists, but is not alive anymore. Margaret approached Thomas. She said, "This is a beautiful structure. It tells a story. We will preserve it. It will stand again somewhere else. It will be remembered. Thomas wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that the chimney could be saved. But his heart knew the truth. The truth was that you cannot save something just by moving it. The truth was that places matter. Roots matter. History matters. A chimney that stands on a ranch where an old man lit fires every morning for 43 years is different from a chimney in a town square where nobody knows the story. But he did not tell Margaret this. Instead, he nodded. He said thank you. He turned and walked toward the corral where Jasper was waiting. The donkey was in his usual spot, facing the chimney, waiting for the smoke that would never come. Thomas had not lit the fire that morning. Thomas had wanted to light it one last time, but he could not. He could not send a message knowing that the chimney would soon be gone, knowing that Jasper would watch the smoke one more time and then nothing. Nothing but emptiness, nothing but the ghost of a ritual. Thomas entered the corral slowly. He was moving like an old man now, like a man carrying the weight of every one of his 84 years. Jasper turned his head slightly. The donkey's ears moved. He knew something was wrong. Animals know. They know before humans know. They know when the world is about to break. Thomas brought treats, apple slices, carrot pieces, things he had given Jasper thousands of times before. Jasper ate them from the old man's hand. But something was different. The donkey's mouth was gentle but sad, like Jasper was eating goodbye. Like every piece of food was a farewell. Thomas put his hand on the donkey's neck. He felt the warmth. He felt the heartbeat underneath the skin. He felt the life that still existed in this old animal that he had loved for 17 years. His voice was quiet when he spoke, so quiet that nobody else could hear it. But Jasper could hear it. "I am sorry," Thomas said. "I am so sorry." He told the donkey things he had never said before. He told Jasper that he had been the best companion. He told the donkey that the years of standing together had meant everything. He told Jasper that sometimes love does not need words. That sometimes love is just showing up every morning and caring about the same thing. He told the donkey that he would remember, that no matter what happened, no matter where he went, he would never forget standing in the cold morning and watching the smoke rise. The donkey pressed his head against the old man's chest. That was Jasper's way of saying goodbye. That was how the donkey showed love. Not with words, not with noise, just with presence, just with the warmth of a body next to another body, just with the knowing that they had existed together. At noon, the truck from the animal sanctuary arrived. It was a smaller truck, quieter than the big machinery trucks. A young man named Marcus got out. He had worked with rescued animals for many years. He understood what he was doing. He understood that he was not just picking up a donkey. He was separating two beings that had been bound together for nearly 2 decades. Marcus examined Jasper carefully. He spoke softly. He said words that all animal people know to say. Words that mean comfort. Words that mean it will be okay. Words that are lies, but necessary lies. Because sometimes an animal needs to hear a lie to have the courage to move forward. Thomas gave Marcus a folder. Papers, medical information, feeding schedules, the name of the food Jasper liked best, the time of day the donkey preferred to walk, everything Thomas knew about the animal he loved. Marcus took the folder like it was precious, like it was a part of Thomas's heart written down on paper. When Jasper walked toward the truck, Thomas did not follow. He could not follow. He could not watch the donkey get inside and the door close and the truck drive away. Instead, he stood in the yard, and he listened. He listened to the sound of hooves on metal. He listened to the truck engine start. He listened to the sound of the truck moving away from the ranch. He did not turn around to watch it disappear. He kept his face toward the chimney. At the same moment that the truck turned the corner and left the property, the workers began to remove the top of the chimney. The decorative cap came off. The bricks that Thomas's father-in-law had arranged so carefully 70 years ago were carefully stacked and placed on a truck. Brick by brick, the chimney was becoming undone. Thomas watched. He watched while his past was taken apart. He watched while the structure that had stood his entire adult life was reduced to pieces. He watched while the thing that had connected him to Jasper was separated into its component parts and prepared to be moved to a new location. By evening, the chimney was half gone. The remaining bricks looked naked and sad, like bones without skin. like a skeleton of what had once been whole. The foundation was still there, but soon that would be gone too. Soon there would only be earth where the chimney had stood. Thomas sat on the ground in the exact spot where Jasper used to stand. He sat where the donkey had waited every morning for 17 years. He sat and he cried. Not loud crying, quiet crying. The kind of crying that comes from deep inside where words cannot reach. All around him, workers moved. All around him, machines made noise. All around him, his life was being erased. But the old man did not move. He just sat in the dirt and cried for the donkey that was gone. He cried for the chimney that was being taken apart. He cried for all the mornings that would never come again. He cried for the life that had been beautiful because it was ordinary, and nobody understood. Nobody working there understood what they were destroying. They only understood that a structure was being dismantled. A structure was being preserved. A structure would live somewhere else. But nobody understood that a heart was being broken in the process. Nobody understood that love itself was being torn down brick by brick. 21 days passed. 21 days of Thomas living in a small apartment in town. 21 days of waking up and not seeing the mountains from his window. 21 days of going to sleep without hearing the sound of wind in the corral. 21 days of life that did not feel like living. He had moved into the apartment because his son had found it for him. It was close to a hospital. It was close to doctors. It was the kind of place where old people went to wait for their lives to end. There was beige carpet. There were white walls. There was nothing that reminded him of anything he had ever loved. But on a Saturday morning, his son came to pick him up. The son did not say where they were going. Thomas knew better than to ask. The son was doing something kind. The son was trying to help. But kindness did not fix what was broken. When they arrived at the location, Thomas did not recognize it at first. It was a valley. It was pretty. It was a nice place. But it was not his place. His place was the ranch. His place was the corral. His place was the old house with the old kitchen where he had lit fires every morning for 43 years. But then he saw it, the chimney. It was standing in the center of a town square. A real town square, with benches arranged around it in a circle, with a stone path around it, with a historical marker next to it explaining what it was and where it came from. The bricks were cleaner than they had been on the ranch. The lines between them were more visible. The chimney looked younger. The chimney looked like it had been born again. There was a ceremony. People came. Margaret Reeves gave a speech. She talked about preservation. She talked about history. She talked about an old man who had loved a building so much that he had sacrificed his own home to save it. She did not say his name out loud, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Thomas stood very still. He did not feel like standing. He wanted to fall to the ground. He wanted to lie down and never get up. The chimney was beautiful and terrible all at once. It was preserved and it was lost. It was alive and it was dead. It was proof that he had made the right choice and proof that he had destroyed everything. After the ceremony, people approached Thomas to shake his hand. They thanked him. They said he was brave. They said he had done something important. But Thomas did not feel brave. Thomas felt like he had given up everything and gotten back only pieces. His son went to the car to give Thomas some time alone. He understood that his father needed to stand near the chimney without being watched. Thomas sat on one of the benches. He looked at the bricks. He counted them in his mind. 1, 2, 3. He tried to remember which bricks had been on the top, which bricks had been touched by his father-in-law's hands, which bricks had seen the most sunrises. The sun was setting. The light was turning orange. It was the same color light as it had been on the ranch. It was the same color light as it had been every evening for 43 years. And Thomas began to cry, not loud crying, but the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep inside that words cannot reach it. He did not hear the sound at first. He did not hear the hooves on the ground. He was too lost in his own sadness. But then he felt it, a warmth next to him, a body pressing against his leg. Jasper, the donkey, had appeared in the town square. Marcus, the young man from the animal sanctuary, had brought him. Marcus had seen the news about the chimney reconstruction. Marcus had understood the story in a way that only someone who loves animals can understand. He had brought the old donkey to the place where the chimney now stood. Thomas looked at Jasper. Jasper looked at Thomas. In that moment, everything that had been broken came back together. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough that life became possible again. Thomas put his hand on the donkey's neck. He felt the heartbeat. He felt the warmth. He felt that the animal he loved was still alive. He felt that the being he cared most about in the world still existed. He looked from the donkey to the chimney. He looked from the chimney back to the donkey. And he understood something that changed everything. They were both still here. The chimney was still standing. Jasper was still breathing. The connection between them had survived the breaking. The love had survived the dismantling. The bond had survived the separation. Tears came down the old man's face. Not tears of sadness anymore. These were different tears. These were tears of understanding. These were tears that came from realizing that the world was not as cruel as it sometimes seemed. That good people still existed. That community still cared. That love could take many forms and still be real. Marcus approached carefully. He said, "I thought he should see the chimney again. I thought maybe you should see him again." Thomas could not speak. He could only nod. He could only hold the donkey's neck and cry and look at the chimney and understand what had happened. Marcus explained that Jasper could come back. The sanctuary was only 15 miles away. Marcus said that he would bring the donkey here once a month, just to stand, just to be present, just to witness. Thomas asked if it was possible. Marcus said yes. Anything was possible if it mattered. And so it began. Every month, on the same day, Thomas would come to the town square. Marcus would arrive with Jasper. They would stand together in front of the chimney. They would not speak because they had never needed to speak. They would just exist in the same space. They would just be present to each other and to the thing they had loved. Some people who passed through the square would see them and wonder. They would see the old man and the old donkey and the old chimney. They would read the historical marker. They would understand part of the story, but not all of it. Not the part about 17 years of watching. Not the part about standing still while the world changed around you. Not the part about how love sometimes looks like presence, like showing up, like staying faithful to one thing for so long that the faithfulness itself becomes the purpose. Thomas lived for 5 more years. He was in his apartment in town, but he was not just waiting to die anymore. He had a reason to wake up. Once a month, he had a reason. Once a month, he had Jasper and the chimney and the understanding that some things survive. Some things endure. Some things matter more than money or progress or the future. When Thomas died, he died peacefully. He died knowing that the chimney would keep standing. He died knowing that Jasper would be cared for. He died knowing that the story would remain. That somewhere in a town square, in a valley in Colorado, an old chimney made of red brick would keep teaching people about love, about patience, about what it means to care about something so much that you would give up everything to preserve it. The animal sanctuary kept Jasper for 3 more years after Thomas died. The donkey lived to be 41 years old. That is longer than most donkeys live. That is longer than old animals usually live. It was like Jasper was waiting for something. Like the donkey would not leave until the story was finished. When Jasper finally died, they held a small ceremony at the chimney. They scattered the donkey's ashes in front of the bricks. They said words about faithfulness. They said words about love. And the chimney continued standing, brick by brick by brick, holding the light that had passed through it, holding the memory of an old man and an old donkey who had asked very little from the world except to be allowed to witness it together. Some people visit the chimney now. They stand in front of it. They read about where it came from. They think about what it means. They think about an old man crying next to a donkey. They think about how love does not require much. Love just requires showing up. Love just requires being faithful. Love just requires caring about the same thing every single day until caring itself becomes the greatest achievement. And the chimney stands. It will stand for as long as brick and mortar can stand. It will outlive all of us. It will remind people that some things matter, that some bonds are strong enough to survive anything. That witness itself is sacred.